morning, and welcome to this College of Education Town Hall on student retention and persistence. My name is Susan Taylor, and I am Associate Vice Chancellor for Undergraduate Education and Academic Planning in the Office of the Provost and a faculty member in the English Department. In my role as Associate Vice Chancellor, I work with the campus undergraduate enrollment strategy governance structure and co-convene the steering committee with Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance, Chuck Litchfield, and serve with several subcommittees. More on that in a few minutes. As Associate Vice Chancellor, I also work with the Gateway Program Seminar and Excel Center colleagues whose programs have been key for the U.S. Department of Education Strengthening Institutions Program grant that is today's topic. Before giving a brief overview about some of the work being done to support student retention, persistence, and graduation here at UCCS, I'd like to thank College of Education Dean Valerie Martin Conley for hosting this important topic, and Megan Bell for gathering today's panelists, as well as the panelists themselves for sharing their experiences and insights with us. I also want to express appreciation for all they do to support our students' success at UCCS. In providing an overview for this event, I'd like to highlight briefly several areas of campus context for the specific initiatives featured in the SIP grant that is the focus today. These include a snapshot of some earlier retention and persistence components at UCCS in the time frame leading up to the start of the SIP grant, the implementation of the undergraduate enrollment strategy governance structure, which began work in spring semester of 2018, some data resources found on our institutional research website, led by Robin Marschke, and some initiatives in these areas since 2018, and finally a few next steps. In giving this brief glimpse of previous retention and persistence initiatives, I want to acknowledge the work of many on our campus over the years to support student retention and persistence. Our current efforts have been able to build on these foundations and expand them thanks to these earlier contributions. In particular, I'd like to highlight the leadership of Barbara Gaddis, who served as AVC and Executive Director of Student Support and Retention and guided UCCS's programming for a number of years until her retirement at the end of 2018, partial retirement. These earlier pre-SIP grant programs included various forms of outreach to new first-year students before the fall semester, including those identified as potentially at risk in specific groups such as first-generation students, development of initial learning communities tied to pre-major areas, partnerships with informal and ad hoc advisory groups providing guidance on retention and persistence, collaboration with the first-year seminar program, now known as Gateway Program Seminar, or GPS, and work with faculty in the Excel Centers on outreach and support for specific courses with higher DFW rates. This included using an Excel worksheet, and I'm sure we'll hear more about some of the technology that has enabled that work since. As you will hear in the updates from our panelists, these programs have provided a basis for several of the areas developed in the SIP grant and beyond. Another significant development in this brief history is a newish campus structure that was put in place late fall of 2017, the Undergraduate Enrollment Strategy Governance Structure. This consists of a steering committee with 4 subcommittees in the areas of retention and graduation, admissions policy, course scheduling and capacity, and enrollment marketing. These subcommittees each have representation from across campus and across the divisions of academic affairs, student affairs, and administration and finance. They develop ideas and initiatives that are shared with deans, associate deans, the cabinet, and others for feedback and implementation. To gather input about supporting our students' retention, persistence, and graduation, these groups hosted a series of campus and college-based town hall sessions, as well as a student town hall from late 2017 through February of 2018 to help guide the subcommittee's work. Additional town halls in November of 2018 and February of 2020 followed up on retention and enrollment topics. Since the spring of 2018, the Retention and Graduation Subcommittee has met every 2 weeks during the academic year and monthly in the summer. With Chuck Litchfield, I co-convene this group, and its members overall include 7 additional representatives from academic areas, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and 7 other members from student affairs and administration and finance areas. These representatives include several of today's panelists as well. In addition to campus input and an inventory of campus initiatives in retention and persistence, we found over 50 of those in the spring of 2018. The Retention and Graduation Subcommittee has also turned to data to inform our work. Central to this is the Institutional Research Office website under the direction of Robin Marschke, who's also a member of the Steering and Retention and Graduation Subcommittees and co-convener of the Course Scheduling and Capacity Subcommittee. This website provides a number of resources for data about retention, persistence, and graduation at UCCS. This slide just points to a few. I just gave a very small sample. These include overall campus-level reports and reports with data disaggregated by demographic groups. On the left side of this slide, for example, is a table of overall retention rates of first-year students since 1994. On the right side of this slide is the table of contents of the annual detailed retention report by cohort that IR provides each fall after census to illustrate some of the detailed information that is available, and would encourage you, if you haven't had a chance before to look at that report, to take a look at it. Additional resources include the National Survey of Student Engagement, or NSSE data, that we currently are receiving every 3 years, and the 2021 reports will be available soon. Turning now to some recent initiatives since 2018, the overall focus of the strategic enrollment groups has been on campus-wide, campus-level actions related to retention and persistence. I'd like to share a few examples of this larger context for the SIP grant areas. One focus has been on understanding potential barriers for students and data that can help with these. For example, the subcommittees have been interested in potential obstacles and factors that influence the number of credit hours students complete per year, and in turn, the pace of their progress toward a degree. With the subcommittees, Robin Marschke developed a survey to understand why students might take 24 or fewer credits per year. Top reasons students gave included their work schedules, concerns that academic performance would decline with a heavier load, the additional cost of tuition and fees with more credits, the course schedule, and family responsibilities. This led to subcommittee conversations and the development of Advising's Think 30 advising approach under subcommittee member and advising director Brett Fugate's leadership to help students with strategies for timely degree completion, including adding in some additional credit hours where possible while recognizing students' varying circumstances. Additionally, to help understand why students withdraw from UCCS before completing their degrees, subcommittee members, including Megan Bell and Javita Rogers, also developed a brief optional survey to provide a chance for students to indicate why they are withdrawing from UCCS and offer them resources and support. The results of this ongoing survey indicate that a majority plan to return in a future semester, while some others indicated they were transferring elsewhere or selecting employment. Addressing barriers has also included potential policy barriers. The Retention and Graduation Subcommittee developed initial ideas for the campus grade forgiveness policy that went through the regular campus policy process last year and is in effect starting this fall semester. Furthermore, in summer of 2021, subcommittee members saw a need for students to be able to request to retroactively drop a course or courses from the recent COVID-19 affected semesters, since grade forgiveness does not apply to these terms. As a result, the Office of the Provost, the colleges, advising, and the registrar created the extended drop for COVID terms policy, and several hundred students have already made requests for these extended drops since the start of the fall semester. The subcommittee has also identified opportunities for faculty outreach and engagement to support retention and persistence, and have partnered to promote the expanded use of the Starfish Early Alert System starting in fall of 2019, and we'll hear more about that from Ellen Burkhart, to provide workshops in conjunction with the UCCS Teaching and Learning Conference and the Faculty Resource Center, and email blasts with resources and ideas, have also been brainstorming this summer with the Faculty Resource Center director and staff to share ideas for retention and persistence and hear about things such as the Faculty Resource Center's Design with Accessibility in Mind program and Universal Design for Inclusive Teaching badge program. The FRC's Fall Gift Exchange series also focuses on retention and persistence this year. With the start of COVID, providing additional support for effective remote teaching was another focus. Subcommittee members Ann Amakuchi, Jerry Phillips, Omar Montoya, and Peter Braza, among others, developed a Microsoft Teams site for faculty support for remote teaching in summer of 2020. Student support and engagement areas have also been included and include things such as subcommittee member Brad Bears, Senior Executive Director of Student Life and Assessment, who is leading the reboot of full-scale student life activities this fall and their impact on engagement and persistence. From fall of 2021, attendance is already exceeding fall of 2019 at these events. Several areas of focus have also included initiatives around student pathways. In addition to the Think 30 advising approach, meta majors and revisions to GPS, which we'll hear more about several of these shortly, is the expansion of required advising for first-year students in fall of 2018 moving forward. These campus programs also link with ideas from the Complete College America Colorado Momentum Pathways Planning Academy that was hosted by the Colorado Department of Higher Education in spring and fall of 2019. Several subcommittee members, including Brett Fugate, Harper Johnson, and myself, along with Catherine Cliff, who's a math faculty member that we will hear more from shortly, Math Excel Center Assistant Director Sean Dean, LAS Associate Dean Alex Ilyasova, and Chris Duvall, Director of Degree Audit and Transfer, have helped connect campus efforts and subcommittee ideas with the CDHE's Pathways Project, components of which UCCS has been implementing, including co-requisite support and elements of the Momentum Year. As these examples illustrate, much of the initial work of the strategic enrollment groups has been focused on overall student retention, persistence, and graduation. As we turn to next steps, these include assessing the impact and effectiveness of these recent initiatives, including disaggregating data to understand impacts among different student demographic groups. This also connects with another significant step moving forward, which is addressing gaps in retention, persistence, and graduation among different student demographic groups at UCCS, such as first-generation students, BIPOC and minoritized students, and Pell recipients. Additionally, the subcommittees are also seeking to understand the recent, ongoing, and future impacts of COVID-19 for our students' retention, persistence, and degree progress. As we turn to Dean Martin Conley, who will introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. James, and to our SIP grant panelists, I'd like to recognize again that there are many areas on campus working to support student retention and persistence, and this overview captures just a few. Ideas and initiatives from across campus are welcome, so please be in touch with how we might partner to support our students, since there is more to be done. I will close by saying that one of the most significant lessons learned in the last few years from the strategic enrollment groups has been the value and impact of working across divisions at the campus level. The conversations and teamwork fostered by this collaborative structure is making a difference. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of this with you today.
Thank you so much, Susan, for your leadership and your support. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Valerie Martin Conley. I am Dean of the College of Education and Professor in Leadership Research and Foundations here at UCCS. I'd like to start out by welcoming all of our colleagues who are here and able to join us in person today. I would also like to welcome all of our colleagues, distinguished guests, and panelists. It's wonderful to see some of you in person again today. We are excited to have this opportunity to gather together again and to focus on such an important topic. We also have many people who are joining us remotely for this College of Education Town Hall on Retention and Persistence. Welcome to all of you who are joining us remotely online today. We do ask that if you are joining us virtually, that you please keep your microphone muted and your camera off unless you are speaking. This will help us in managing the quality of the session. Over the past 6 years, Dr. Megan Bell has served as the principal investigator and led a group of researchers as they studied student retention and persistence initiatives at UCCS as part of a U.S. Department of Education Strengthening Institutional Programs, SIP grant. This event will provide an overview of their findings. Dr. Bell and other presenters will also share with us the changes and strategies that are currently in progress for supporting UCCS students. And we are delighted to have Dr. Bell as a member of the faculty in the College of Education at UCCS. As part of today's town hall, we also wanted to situate the conversation more broadly and to begin our day by orienting to the importance of understanding retention and persistence for institutions across the nation. I can think of no one better to set the stage for us than my colleague, Dr. Glenn W. James. It's my pleasure to introduce him to you now as our keynote speaker. I will tell you that we are experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty, and so I'm going to go through the introduction of Dr. James, and then hopefully we will be able to get him online shortly. One of the positive silver linings of COVID has been our ability to bring in speakers from around the country and even around the world to events such as this, but sometimes we do experience a little bit of a hiccup now and then. I've known Glenn for many, many years. Dr. James has developed his knowledge of research, planning, and analysis through work experiences at Tennessee Tech University, Baylor University, and Virginia Tech, as well as through involvement and leadership roles in institutional research at multiple levels. He has served as president of the Association for Institutional Research, AIR, the Southern Association of Institutional Research, SAIR, and the Texas and Tennessee Associations, TAIR and TENAIR. At Tennessee Tech University, Glenn served as Director of Institutional Research, as University Accreditation Liaison, and as a tenured member of the graduate faculty. He earned doctoral and master's degrees from Virginia Tech, go Hokies, and a bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I have long admired Glenn's commitment to the field of institutional research and to using data to inform institutional continuous quality improvement with an intentional purpose to support students. Now, hopefully without delay, it is my pleasure to turn this over to Dr. Glenn W. James. Welcome, Glenn, and thank you for joining us today.
Well, good morning, everyone in Burger Hall and everyone viewing from elsewhere on or off campus. This has to be the tops of my most embarrassing moments, so I hope you will forget it very soon. I am sure I will never forget it. So there's some kind of student dropout or attrition. There's some kind of joke in there, but I just don't know what it is. But anyway, I apologize for the extensive delay. I have been working on this for over an hour and struggling with Microsoft Teams. So I apologize for all of the delay. Let's see if I can accelerate and just kind of keep moving. I'll apologize for kind of a fast pace, but I think we can probably jump through some of what I wanted to share with you. I appreciate your inviting me to engage with you on this day when you're thinking about your Strengthening Institutions Program grant. I can see from the agenda for today's meeting that there's some helpful sessions coming up a little later, and I like you, am looking forward to that for you. I appreciate the kind introduction from Dean Conley, and I owe her a great debt for her patience today, and I am sorry for any embarrassment that I have caused UCCS, Dean Conley, and anyone else today. My apologies. I think Dean Conley shared a little bit about my background, and let me just say that wherever I have worked in different kinds of positions and institutions and in several states, I have always had student progress and student success as a primary part of the context of my work and of my professional reason to be. So this, of course, is not unique. We can all certainly claim that student success is at the heart of what we do. So today's gathering of professionals at UCCS has a fundamental purpose, and that purpose is important to each UCCS student individually, to UCCS students collectively, and certainly to us in our respective roles in working with our students. And so I anticipate that you will be learning from one another today about techniques and approaches that have been used there at UCCS, and you'll be talking about what has been positive, helpful, and beneficial to UCCS students and to UCCS. Realm of student retention, student progress, student success is very broad. It's large and has many important parts and a comprehensive context. So by necessity, I'm going to delimit my remarks this morning so as to provide just a little bit of a general base, and we're going to even cut that a little more because of timing. So before you focus on other sessions this morning that will be about UCCS, let me share just a little bit about a broader perspective. I think I'm going to jump over this slide, and so I'm going to share a few remarks here and there, and I may kind of cut out some of the slides I've shared. The term student retention has been part of the higher education lexicon for 90 years. We know that this is the case because student retention has been in the higher education literature for 90 years. And this is really not so surprising. After all, ideally, all of us in the post-secondary education enterprise, students, faculty, staff, administration, all of us would want students to engage with the higher education experience, to gain from that engagement, and for students to learn, grow, and develop academically, socially, and more. So for each student to advance and develop into a more capable, more complete, perhaps more self-actualized person, that's embedded in what the collegiate experience is designed to be. And so we hope each student will leave the institution with a degree in hand and with a greater sense of a lot of things by the time they are ready to step away from UCCS as compared to when they first entered and enrolled at UCCS. So engagement with the collegiate experience will lead to a more developed person. During the past 45 years or so, as I said, really retention goes back before that, but it has been just in the last 40 to 45 years that theoretical underpinnings about student retention have received more attention, study, and focus. Researchers have sought to understand retention, reduce attrition, and improve the collegiate experience. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to interact with Vincent Tinto, a scholar faculty member and researcher, when he began to receive a lot of attention regarding his research about student engagement and student retention. He explained that some of his ideas and theoretical underpinnings, he had derived them from the work of a colleague of his, William Spady, who also had adapted some theoretical constructs from sociologist Emil Durkheim. And the reason I'm mentioning those is just to say that Tinto's concept of the importance of student engagement and the integration with the college environment, that was a very important, broad step upon which a lot of the succeeding work about student retention has proceeded. So Vincent Tinto is certainly one of those names that you would want to recognize and remember. A lot of things have derived from the work that he did early on, and he has been doing other additional work over the years. So jumping back forward into the 21st century, instead of back when Vincent Tinto began his theoretical considerations, back in the 21st century now, we're still aware of the importance of student engagement with the higher education experience and the importance of student integration with the collegiate environment in all of its many facets and aspects. Post-secondary education, certainly in the United States, but even internationally, has so many different aspects to it, different packaging, different types of opportunities, various delivery formats and schedules and so on. And so a number of decades ago, the collegiate experience tended to be packaged in a more standardized way, but today the more traditional packaging and timing is only one of a number of options that can be chosen for pursuit of post-secondary education. There are certainly other ways, other timelines, other modalities for pursuing a higher education credential, and there are even alternative options beyond the bachelor's degree or graduate degree, such as certifications, badges, and more. So today there are many more options and opportunities for pursuit of higher education or some alternative to a collegiate education. And so in this meeting today, this UCCS meeting today, I realize you will be delimiting your focus to degrees, programs, courses, and activities that more prevalently comprise the academic and social enterprises of UCCS and UCCS students. But let's aim for a moment a little more broadly, and we'll at least touch on student progress and student success just to gain a more comprehensive overview of this large subject. One of the early confirmations of some of the research was to recognize that the greatest risk generally for a college student is the risk and the challenge of that initial transition into college from wherever the new student has come from, whether that's from high school or from a two-year college or from some other post-secondary institution from which the student transfers. That transition step is where the greatest risk for attrition or departure comes. And I'll just leave that at that. And so higher education has recognized that helping first-time, first-year students to face that transition challenge is important. And so, as you know, some of these that you'll see listed on these next couple of screens, some of these things you're familiar with already, and some perhaps you are not. But I understand you have a summer bridge program, for example, at UCCS. And so these are some of the ways in which higher education institutions have sought to help in addressing that transition challenge. First year experience programs, bolstering and improving student orientation, and so on. And so really, we have an important role in the institution, all of us, to assess, assist, and facilitate. We're trying to help students to connect with appropriate resources, people, activities, and experiences. We want to connect the student to the overall collegiate experience at the institution. And so the ultimately, this collegiate experience will add value for those who do complete and earn the degree or complete some other academic goal at the institution. And so these are some of the things that a completer will take with them, hopefully. Greater competence, being a better communicator, critical thinker, being able to relate to other people, even though they are sometimes very different from one's own self. Hopefully, a graduate would be more confident and proud of earning a degree, would be a good colleague, contributor, team member, and so on. So there's growth and development. There's value that is added to the self of the student, but also to the society. And so these are positive things, values added to the student who completes. And I'd like to share with you a sample of some more recent activity. When I mentioned Vincent Tinto, as I said, his work really began 40 to 45 years ago, and he has done other work since then. But let's try to stay more in the 21st century. So in the last decade or two, let's touch on, mostly the last decade or two, let's touch on some examples of ideas, approaches, practices that are being used or considered in the pursuit of improving student success. You perhaps have heard of this term, high impact practices. George COE and his colleagues at Indiana University, they work not only with the NSSE, the NSSE, the National Survey of Student Engagement, but this developed list of high impact practices was validated, and so you perhaps have seen and may have some experience with some of these different high impact practices, first year seminars, learning communities, and so on. Here are some more. Undergraduate research has been shown to be important, service learning, capstone courses, and so on. And so again, that comes from George COE and his colleagues. Here are some strategies that came out of the Complete College America, CCA. And so perhaps you have seen some of these as well. That third item, 15 to finish, encouraging and advising students to enroll in 15 credit hours each semester so that they will complete and finish the degree on time in a 4-year time frame. And some of these others, perhaps you're familiar with, structured schedules and so on, guided pathways. And again, George COE was involved with some of the CCA as well. Here are just a listing, and I'll speed through these. And these slides will be available for you to review later if you like. But as you can see, some of these are quite familiar and others are not. These are just examples of activity regarding trying to improve student success. Early alert, gateway courses, certainly academic advising, very important. Healthy minds, healthy campus, thinking about the totality of a person, their mental health, as well as other aspects. And certainly COVID-19 has thrown a crazy wrench into the higher education experience in the last year and a half. And we've all had to figure out ways to deal with that. Tutorial services, very important. Peer mentors, I imagine you have experience with that, including mentoring of students on academic probation. Online learning has been more prevalent, of course, during the pandemic. Helping students thrive more than just survive. So these are lots of different topics and things that are related to trying to improve student success and student retention. Student-faculty interaction has been shown to be important, effective teaching, advanced analytics, and there are various software platforms and services that are available to help improve and inform the advising process and those who work with advisement. Effective learning strategies, engaging in reflective and integrative learning more often. Sense of belonging is important. Grit is another concept. And again, addressing student success in holistic ways. Jillian Kinsey, who is also a colleague of George Koo, warned about several things. Here are 4 items that she just wanted to warn higher education to avoid. Avoid a success narrative that too easily blames students if a retention rate is low or if some students are dropping out or stopping out. It's too easy and common to blame the students. And she is saying instead we should look at the institution and think about what is it that the institution could do? What is it that we could do to help to reduce that attrition, to help students to not stop out or drop out? Second item, avoiding conceptions of student success that focus too narrowly on completion without equal attention to educational quality. I think that says that clearly and succinctly. Avoided deficiency of illustrations of equity-minded practices, another important item. And avoiding piling on solutions instead of implementing problem-focused, integrated, improvement-oriented strategies. Those are items from a presentation that Jillian Kinsey made at the National Symposium on Student Retention. And I'd like to put in a word for a resource that I have found to be valuable. The acronym is CSRDE, Consortium for Student Retention Data Exchange. It is operated by the University of Oklahoma. I understand UCCS has had some experience and interaction with this in the past. It's an opportunity for UCCS to be an institutional member of CSRDE. And I'll just quickly hit or cite 6 benefits of institutional membership. This is a data sharing consortium that would help you have an opportunity to have inter-institutional comparisons regarding retention, particularly of several student subgroups: first-time freshmen, first-time STEM freshmen, and transfer students. You can even select your own institutional comparison group. If there are 6 other institutions that you would like to compare UCCS to, you could do that. There is a national annual conference called the National Symposium on Student Retention. It's an excellent opportunity to engage with keynote presentations about current issues, sessions about current topics and practices, and of course, networking opportunities with other colleagues who work with student success. You can avoid reinventing the wheel. You can perhaps avoid veering into a practice that you're considering because some other institutions have found it to not be very satisfactory or to be insufficiently worthwhile. You can benefit from insights and advice about student success activities from other colleagues at other institutions, perhaps institutions that are similar in size, scope, and mission to your institution, but even institutions that are different from yours. You could say, well, what is happening at a large public research one institution, Ohio State University, for example? You can find out what it is they are doing. Or a smaller private institution like Trinity University in San Antonio. So there are things that can be learned, and there are exchanges of information, and it's really an excellent opportunity. A third resource is a compendium called Building Bridges for Student Success. It is a large source book that contains some excellent information to help institutions enhance student success. There are webinars that CSRDE provides that you and your colleagues, any number of people at your institution can attend these webinars. The cost is the same, whether you have a large group, small group, or people logging in individually from their own respective offices. No limit on logins. Those webinars are available. There's a recommended reference list that's been developed by colleagues from other CSRDE member institutions, beneficial books, articles, and publications about student retention. And finally, an archive of presented papers from the past NSSR symposia. All of those papers are in a repository that you would have access to. And those papers are grouped by topic, an excellent and rich resource. So there's a large amount of higher education literature regarding student retention, progress, and success. There's a great wealth of information that's available, and that can be helpful to you as you develop your own institutional plans and strategies to improve student success for UCCS students. And in the interest of time, you're welcome to forego the comments or questions, but I will stand by for a moment and see if there's anything you would like to add. Hearing no comments or questions, I'm going to thank you again for your indulgence, your great patience. I am truly very sorry and embarrassed about what has happened, and I'm just going to cut this short and let you move on to better things. Again, my apologies. And Dean Connolly, I will talk with you some other time and apologize profusely again. Thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Reason to apologize. That was absolutely fabulous and hit the mark exactly in what I had hoped. So now we're having technical difficulties in the room here because I'm hearing myself echo back to you. But this is the way that we live in a post-pandemic world. So it's wonderful to see you, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean Connolly.
All right, bye-bye. So after all of that, we are appearing to be almost right on schedule. So we are now at break time, and we will reconvene at 9:30.
Good morning, everyone. I think we're going to get started. If you could find your seats, either there in Berger or virtually. I am assuming everyone can hear me okay. Thanks. I think that's Sandy. Thank you. Welcome back. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Megan Bell. I currently work as a research associate in the College of Education. I see Dean Conley. Hello. I'm joining you all from California this morning. I'm a little jealous you're, those of you in the room, getting to chat and have coffee together. But I'm glad to be here virtually. For those of you that maybe joined a little late this morning, or this is your first session and you're attending virtually, just a reminder to stay off camera and muted. Unless you're speaking, we're recording the event, so it makes the recording smoother. And when we get to questions at the end, you can raise your virtual hand if you'd like to speak or put something in the chat. So this next part of the program is going to provide an overview of the Strengthening Institutions Project Grant, or the SIP grant for short. I'm going to share a little bit of context for those of you that may not be as familiar with this project, but the majority of the session will be devoted to having our evaluator team from the CU Denver Evaluation Center summarize the primary findings and lessons learned for our campus, with hopefully some time for questions at the end. The SIP grant is a U.S. Department of Education federal grant, and according to them, it's intended to expand the capacity of higher education institutions to serve students by providing funds to improve and strengthen the academic quality, institutional management, and fiscal stability of institutions. UCCS was awarded this originally 5-year grant from the Department of Ed back in 2014, and it was originally sponsored through the Provost's office. I assumed the role of principal investigator in January 2020 after the campus had received the first of 2 no-cost extensions. We are finishing up the second no-cost extension year in 3 days, so this is our culminating event for the project. The original PIs chose to pursue a number of curricular and co-curricular activities at UCCS to better support students who hadn't persisted. You're going to be hearing from some innovative faculty and staff in the 2 panels later this morning who have been involved with a number of the different activities throughout the time of the project. However, before I introduce our colleagues from CU Denver, I'd like to thank a few people at UCCS, some of whom who are not presenting today, but who have really helped me as I assumed the role of this PI for this project. First, I wanted to acknowledge co-PI Barbara Gaddis and Kayleen St. Louis, who served as the project manager, who were involved with this far before I came on board. Thank you for serving. I also wanted to thank Robin Marshke from Institutional Research, Gwen Gennaro and the team from the Office of Sponsored Programs, and Charlie Kuehler, who provided me with both data and guidance throughout the project. There's a lot behind the scenes that goes into a grant of this size. And then related to today, I wanted to thank Debbie, Cindy, and Andre from the College of Education, and Bradley and the event services and catering team for their behind the scenes magic to make an event that's really 2 events in one when you're doing a hybrid come together. So thank you all very much. So I'm now very excited to turn over and introduce Susan Connors and Shuyen Tan from the Evaluation Center at CU Denver. The SIP team began to engage with them in the spring of 2020, and they were hired to help us with a summative evaluation of the project. They're going to share highlights from the summative report and some of the overall key lessons learned from the project. So if you both could come on camera, or whoever's talking, and I will share the presentation.
Thank you, Megan. Hopefully everyone is seeing our PowerPoint now. Although it just disappeared on my screen. There it is again. Well, thank you, Dr. Bell and Dean Conley, for inviting us to share the highlights of our evaluation work for the SIP grant at UCCS. My colleague Shuyen Tan is also online today, and we're part of the team from the Evaluation Center, and we've worked closely with the SIP leaders, Dr. Bell, Dr. Gaddis, Dr. St. Louis, to conduct this evaluation. Next slide, please. The Evaluation Center, just to give you some context, we're located within the School of Education and Human Development at the University of Colorado Denver's downtown campus. And we've been around for 16 years. Our purpose is to provide external program evaluation to educational groups and nonprofit organizations. And we work both within the University of Colorado system and with external partners. Our goal is to provide high quality evaluation to inform continuous quality improvement and to assess outcomes. Currently, we have 15 professional evaluators on our team and 8 graduate assistants, and we have 25 active projects right now. And you can read more about us if you choose, or if you're in the need of evaluation services, our website's at the bottom of this screen. Next slide, please. To give you just a quick overview of our methods, all of this is available in our full report, but I'm just going to give you the highlights. We use 3 strategies to do this summative evaluation. We did key informative interviews with stakeholders, a small group, but people who were very, very involved with the program, 21 purposefully selected faculty, students, and alumni. We also analyzed institutional data provided by us to us by the Office of Institutional Research and the First Year Experience Office. So I want to say thank you to Robin Marshak and Ellen Burkhart for their assistance that made this method possible. We also reviewed a large volume of prior evaluation reports, those submitted to the Department of Education and those prepared by the previous external evaluator. Just quickly to give you an overview of how the original grant was laid out, because this is how we aligned our evaluation. The original writers of the SIP grant targeted 3 groups of students, those who are conditionally admitted, intent majors, and undecided. And the original grant outlined 3 activity groups. Activity 1 was initiating student support services. This is where the Summer Bridge program and those freshman transition courses aligned. The second activity was to redesign the curriculum in those gateway courses, the courses that are needed for students to continue in their majors in math and science, and to enact tutoring to support those academically at-risk students. And then the final activity was to strengthen the capacity of UCCS to improve the success rate of students of at-risk freshmen and to fulfill its mission to provide high-quality higher education to students in Southern Colorado. So let's look at the outcomes of what we found. Again, more information and more analyses are available in our full report. For activity 1, we looked at an aggregate group of students who went through the Summer Bridge program from 2015 through 2021. And this is overall, first of all, we wanted to see if the groups were comparable. Were Summer Bridge students comparable to other conditionally admitted students? We needed to know that before we could proceed with our analyses. And we found that yes, even though the Summer Bridge group was much smaller, they were similar in Pell Grant eligibility, in Black, Indigenous, people of color percentages, and in gender. So what did we find? Well, very positive results. By combining the data across the years from 2015 through 2019, we found that a higher percentage of students who participated in Summer Bridge continued their enrollment or transferred to another higher ed institution as compared to other conditionally admitted students who did not participate in Summer Bridge. The 3-semester retention rate for Summer Bridge students was 85.5% as compared to 43.1% for other conditionally admitted students. The Summer Bridge students also earned more credit to a level of statistical significance too. They had slightly higher GPAs, but that was not statistically significant. You may wonder about graduation. We were not able to do a graduation comparison because we didn't feel like we had an adequate sample. Only 2 cohorts would have been at that point. We were only able to do these analyses by combining 5 years of data for Summer Bridge students. From interviews, talking with students and alumni who participated in Summer Bridge, they spoke glowingly about their experience. Some of the themes that were evident was that it provided a positive start to college, and for many of these students, they had not had a really positive high school educational experience. So this was a shift for them. You can read the quotes here on this slide. They felt very connected. They felt like there was a sense of community among those going through the summer bridge, and they began to make connections, personal connections with faculty members through the summer bridge program as well. They felt like they knew the campus. I love this quote. We felt like we were freshmen 2.0 because we knew the campus and we were getting to know some of the professors. They also talked about how it enhanced their skills, that they had learned success skills, they learned what was expected in a college course and ways to be successful. It increased their confidence to do so. For activity number 2, the redesigned courses, we merged all the courses for Math 1040, Math 1050, Chem 1201, and Chem 1211. And we looked at those as a group. And we looked at the pass rates in the redesigned section as compared to the pass rates in those sections that were presented traditionally, the non-redesigned sections. And we found a statistically significant difference. As you can see in this slide, 72.5% of students passed in the redesigned sections as a group, as compared to 64.6 in the non-redesigned sections. Of course, we understand there are many variables that affect pass rates, the time of day, the experience of the instructor, class size, but we feel like these results indicate a positive trend. We looked at those 4 courses then separately, and we found the greatest difference was in the pass rates for Math 1040. That was a statistically significant difference between the redesigned sessions and the non-redesigned sessions. That's the bars on the far left side of this particular graph. For Math 1050 and Chem 1201, the redesigned sections did have a higher pass rate, but not to a level of statistical significance. And for the Chem 1211, the non-redesigned sections had a higher pass rate, again, not to a level of statistical significance. Again, however, we have to be cautious in looking at these results because there were only 3 semesters of data available for Chem 1201 and only 2 semesters for Chem 1211. We talked to faculty who either participated in the redesign process or were teaching in the redesign courses. And I think you're going to hear from some of those later this morning. They saw many positive benefits of the redesign for their students. They agreed with students that it boosted their confidence. They also felt like it increased achievement and student engagement. They also noted the benefits for them personally, increasing their satisfaction with teaching. They felt like the process supported their collaboration across departments and even across colleges, and overall improved their teaching skills. And all the faculty who we talked to indicated that they had used their new teaching strategies in other courses beyond the redesigned sessions. I'll pause a second so you can look at those great quotes there. Okay, moving on then to activity number 3. This was the institutional changes. This is policy and service changes that increase the capacity of UCCS to serve academically at-risk students. And the program leaders were very cautious to acknowledge that these were collaborative efforts with many departments and have to be viewed within the context of all those activities that Assistant Vice Chancellor Taylor talked about in her opening comments this morning, that this was part of a much larger effort. But they did call out some that they feel like the SIP grant especially touched on, and that was establishing the Summer Bridge program, collaborating with the redesign of the Gateway Programs seminar, linking academically at-risk students with learning communities, career workshops, advising and tutoring, and initiating the graduate peer academic coaches. They also talked about, pointed with pride at the redesign of the courses, the ones that we just looked at, Math 1040, Math 1050, and the redesign of Chem 1201, 1211, and other introductory science courses. And then institutional changes that they felt like the SIP grant had touched. They pointed to being included in campus-wide committees to address student enrollment and retention, initiating the Starfish Early Alert and Connect system, and planning for sustainability. That, as Megan said, that this grant is down to the last 3 days. So what will continue after the grant? And they talked about the importance of having funding for staff to support student success, the continuation of the Summer Bridge GPS sections, the continuation of the early alert system, the graduate peer coaches, and peer leaders in the math and science department. And at one of those that will be sustained, the early alert system, this is specific data that shows how well that was being used. And you can see that increasing numbers of faculty were engaging with the Starfish advising and tracking system over time. Increasing number of students were also receiving both alerts and kudos through the system. In terms of the lessons learned over the 6 years of implementing the SIP grant, there were some important strategies that they felt like were essential to strengthening institutional capacity to serve all students. Students, alumni, and faculty all reported the importance of a personal approach to connection to peers and peer supports and to faculty supports and advisors. Program leaders noted the importance of engaging in multiple groups across campus and then sustaining those partnerships. They reported it was important to provide consistent communication and to support participating faculty and staff to increase their satisfaction and ultimately to increase their retention. Another important lesson learned was the importance of using data to identify the needs originally as the grant was being written and then to track the effectiveness of those interventions over time. So what could have been better? It's also part of the importance of lessons learned. What could have been improved? Faculty participants reported they would have benefited from additional faculty development, such as workshops, online courses, or conferences to support their growth as educators while they were engaging in that redesign process. Retrospectively, program leaders reported that they believed dedicating release time or incentives for participating faculty would have been a strength. They also said it would have been helpful to hire staff dedicated to program implementation rather than adding additional duties to other faculty staff members, and that would have encouraged continuity of the program over the years. Program leaders also reported a need for additional timely and actionable formative feedback as the program was implemented and to plan for tracking the outcomes, the effectiveness of outcomes in advance. So as I mentioned, we have two versions of our report, a 25-pager and a 5-pager. And those are being submitted now. And if you'd like copies of those, you can contact the folks that were leading the initiative. If you have questions about the evaluation, you certainly can contact me and my colleague Shu Yan. Thank you for this opportunity to share our results. We're happy to take questions, or again, you can reach out to us individually. So Megan, with that, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Susan. While folks are maybe thinking of what they might like to ask, I know hearing data at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday is something else. But I just wanted to say how much it's been a joy to work with Susan and Shuyen and previously their colleague Bridget. If any of faculty are considering writing a grant and looking for evaluators, I would highly recommend them. They've been responsive, patient, positive, and I wish they had been on board from the very beginning of this project, but we're glad that we were able to get them to help us with this summative evaluation. So I will need help if there are folks in the room that would like to ask a question, but I should be able to see anyone online that might want to ask. We have plenty of time. I see Dean Conley walking. I don't know if that means she's coming to say something. Oh, there's my giant face on the screen. That's amazing.
Thank you. This was actually just really wonderful to hear the summary from the evaluators. Thank you so very much.
Ooh, I lost Valerie's audio. I'm sorry, Valerie.
Hear me now?
Yes, there you go. You're back.
Okay. All right, maybe I stepped a little too far away from the microphone before. But I just was saying thank you for the wonderful overview and the summary. And just wondering, where you stand depends on where you sit. So as a dean of a college, I'm curious if there are any insights that you or our evaluators may share about ways in which the deans and the academic administrators, department chairs, et cetera, can ensure that we are supporting these efforts. I know there was some mention about additional faculty development, possibly course release, but was there anything else that came up in the conversations about ways that we might support these efforts moving forward?
I can speak for a minute, and then if Susan wanted to add anything, I think one of our challenges from my time both working as an administrator and on this grant is purely communication and alignment. There are so many folks doing a lot of great work and are usually on board for helping, but just don't know all the initiatives. I didn't know in depth what was happening with this grant until I assumed the role of PI, and I feel like I was pretty involved in student support. So I think that deans and leadership, if we can continue to provide ways for faculty and staff to have a greater understanding of what's happening across campus. For example, in the College of Education, I know you do your summits once a semester, and that way faculty know what the possibilities are. I think that there are a lot of very innovative faculty out there who are willing to help, but are balancing a lot of different responsibilities. So if there's ways that initiatives like this can be included in their responsibilities for research or service or teaching, I think that only helps us. And I would agree that the faculty that you'll hear from later were paid over the summer, many of them, to help redesign and do work on these courses. And so I think they just need dedicated time. On the staff side, our challenge has always been people power, and we tend to have added things to people's responsibility, which is great because everyone wants to help, but it becomes challenging then to make sure our work is quality and that we have the time for evaluation and study and analysis of what's working. So that would be my other suggestion, is that we continue to invest in folks can help us do data collection and analysis, and make sense of the good work that we are doing with students. Susan, did you want to add anything to that before I see there's some other questions in the chat?
I would just re-emphasize that one of the benefits faculty saw was that collaboration across departments and colleges. I think sometimes teaching can be a very lonely occupation, and looking for ways to connect folks to make sure that they can share strategies across that. I think that would be a very important. Yes, there's a question in the chat for you, Megan, about how are freshmen identified for the Summer Bridge program?
Sure. Well, initially, the target population for that were students who were conditionally admitted to the university. So that means they either through test scores or their high school GPA struggled to meet the criteria, and they had an extra layer of review by the LAS admissions committee for admittance. And the condition of their being admitted is they were targeted into certain GPS courses previously. So from that population, the program manager would do outreach through the spring, inviting them to participate in the program. Now, the way that the campus has been thinking about and working with this population of students has adjusted slightly, paying more attention to some of their high school, college prep coursework, and finding that students who have some deficiency in college prep courses would be a good candidate for this program as well. So it's really based on their academics coming into UCCS, nothing to do with their potential, and many of them have thrived. So the idea is to make that bridge from high school to college more intentional, with more support, which really can benefit any student. That's really what GPS was designed for, is to help be that bridge. So kind of front loading that support for this population of students. And as many of you probably are aware, the other thing going on is the kind of national discussion about test scores and how effective they are or not in predicting student success in college. So that's a bigger conversation, but that landscape's kind of changing. And I know the folks working on the admissions policy and retention and graduation committees have really been studying this and adjusting our model for how to best support students who may have academic challenge. I like to make sure that we're not determining the outcomes for students before they even come here, and as much as possible, think about how the university adapts to better support all of our students through these strategies. And so hopefully that's helpful, Vicki. Things are shifting a little bit with how we're admitting students. I'm not the expert on that, but Matthew Cox is a good resource on some of those policy issues that the campus has been thinking about. I know I will also say later on, if you're sticking around for the panel, Omar Montoya is the faculty director of GPS, and they've been expanding this 1-week intensive model to more GPS sections since there has been success with this bridge program. Omar, Sarah Long, and the team over there has been really trying to think about how we can offer that opportunity to more students in the future. Any other questions out there? You can raise your virtual hand, or I don't know, raise your real hand if you're in the room, I guess. Oh, if someone's speaking at that microphone, I'm not able to hear you. I'm sorry.
Does this one work? Yes.
Okay,
Maybe.
great. Go ahead.
Okay. So from Christy McCann, who had to go teach her class, she was wondering if the sections of 1211 included in the data included the spring 2020 semester when COVID hit.
Yes, they did. And Barbara can probably speak more to that. Or Susan. And I don't know what Christy was wanting to talk about there. Maybe in the panel later, we can talk about that further. But COVID does present some very interesting factors for analyzing how things were going. You know, obviously that was such a huge change for our campus, for the entire landscape of higher education and how students engaged with their courses and the campus. I'm not really sure how the Department of Ed is going to think about that for all of us who had projects during this COVID period. I know they've been a little bit more lenient on deadlines and things, but it will be interesting to see if they do any study or analysis at a broader level of the impacts of COVID, since we're still pretty much in it at this point. All right, I can wait a couple more minutes. Okay, well, hearing none, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. I don't know if the next panel would all be able to start a little early, or if we want to go ahead and stick to our timeline. Dr. Conley, you want to keep to the schedule? Yes, keep to the schedule, or yes, start early. Oh, okay, they're ready. So why don't we take about a 10-minute break to allow them to get themselves together. And again, I want to thank very much Susan and Shuyen from the evaluation team. And again, state that if you are a faculty member or a staff member looking to write a grant and need support with evaluation, I would highly recommend. Thank you so much for participating with us today.
Hello. All right. As a reminder, or if you are just joining us, if you are joining us online, please keep your microphone off and your video off, unless you are speaking. Also, if you have any questions at the end, please remember to raise your electronic hand. Or if you are in person, please step up to one of the microphones here. Okay, so hello, my name is Kayleen St. Louis. I am the former SIP manager and current grants administrator for College of Ed. I am going to give you an overview of Activity 1, even though you kind of heard some of it. Activity 1 provided a summer bridge program to help higher risk students prepare for college and a 1 to 2 semester learning community that embedded early and sustained student intervention, personal growth, academic skill enhancement, in an innovative curriculum. Mountain Lion 360 Summer Bridge program was first piloted in 2015 as a 3-week program. The program ran that way until 2019 when it was changed to a 1-week program. Variations of the summer course will continue on through GPS program, which our panelist on the screen, Omar Montoya, will talk about. Another initial outcome of the grant was the creation of the University Studies program, which was intended to identify higher risk student populations and provide them with more supports and structures. These populations include conditionally admitted students, students that did not quite meet the threshold for admittance, intense students who met the requirements for admittance but did not quite meet the requirements for a specific college, and undecided students under 3.0. There are some exciting changes happening with this that our panelist, Brett Fugate, will share. And finally, another goal of Activity 1 was to implement an early alert system. Starfish Early Alert system was piloted in 2016 and has continued to grow in usage over the years. Ellen Burkhart is here on the panel to discuss this further. And quickly, before we let Omar take the virtual stage, I would like to thank all of the faculty and staff that have made Activity 1 possible over the past several years.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Yes? Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. I apologize. I'm actually in Denver at the moment at a hotel, so I do apologize if my service cuts out a bit. I have posted the presentation, a revised copy of that, into the chat and have shared it with everyone should I lose signal for any specific reason. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen presently at the moment with everyone. Can we all see the PowerPoint? Yes, we're okay? Fantastic. Thank you so much. So let me very quickly introduce myself. My name is Omar Montoya. I am the director of the Gateway Program Seminar, and I am so excited today to be able to present on some great things that the GPS program in collaboration with the individuals here on the stage have worked towards over the last 3 years to sort of reinvent that Gateway Program Seminar. In addition to that, Sarah Long, our assistant director, also has worked tremendously to do this as well. So we are really excited about sharing what we have done over the past several years. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar with what GPS is, the Gateway Program Seminar is an academic program designed really to help students adjust to university life. More specifically, it is a foundational course, the first in the Compass curriculum series, and what it does is provide students sort of an academic and also a student success course designed so that way they can, again, make that transition to higher ed a bit more seamlessly. In addition to that, we have several different faculty across campus, both in a cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary sense that work to teach these students to cultivate an inclusive community, to create a sense of belonging from their first year at UCCS and beyond. And there are essentially four primary components of the GPS course. It is an interdisciplinary exploration of a course topic, an intentional development of key academic skills, a linkage with university services, and also then a collaborative involvement with faculty and peers. So just a very quick overview of what GPS is. In relation to the SIP grant and what has transpired over the last several years, these realistically are the student retention and persistence initiatives that we have worked on collectively, and these are including a revision to the faculty application process and professional development, a revision to the GPS curriculum and programming, a revision to the peer leader programming, the way our student mentors support our faculty and also students in their respective courses, and then finally an expansion or a development of new GPS courses. So I'll begin first with the GPS application process. What my co-director and I like to sort of begin with is the idea that student retention truly belongs, or more specifically begins with properly trained faculty and staff. Prior to, again, taking over the GPS program, faculty at campus or off campus, there was no true sort of application process for applying to teach GPS. In addition to that, there was really no true meaningful professional development opportunities for faculty and staff who did apply, and then in turn, what were their requisite experiences, what were their skill levels, etc., in order to be able to teach these freshman seminar programs. And so what we did was we worked not only with HR, but we also worked with the Faculty Resource Center to develop a more inclusive application process for faculty and staff who apply to teach in the GPS program. What we ended up doing was we created an application process that essentially identified the specific criteria that we wanted our faculty to be able to have in teaching these first-year seminar programs. We used essentially high impact practices as a means for this. We also used the HLC sort of designation for, again, what those courses are, and we collectively developed a application process for these. This is a brief overview of how many particular courses that we offer. So on an average fall, we roughly offer 57 courses. We often receive, this past year, we received 76 applications to teach within the program. 95% of our faculty have a master's designation, with 5% of those faculty this year having a bachelor's or higher. And then we also essentially with those 5% requisite experience. And total, we have 159 GPS faculty that teach within the program. What we do with these faculty is we identify their prior experience. We have created an online badge with the Faculty Resource Center that, again, has centered around ongoing HIP, high impact practice badging. And this program is required essentially of all faculty that teach within GPS. Faculty fall into two tiers. First, level 1. These are current UCCS faculty with a master's degree or equivalent. For instance, academic advisors, faculty from other sort of disciplines and programs on campus, and they go through what we refer to as badge number 1. You may teach at UCCS, you may be an academic advisor, for instance, at UCCS, but for these particular faculty, we provide them additional instruction on what it truly means to create curriculum for first-year programming and for first-year students. And so we run them through a badge that, again, includes, and this is a snapshot here on the left of what that looks like. For level 2 faculty, those essentially who are either UCCS staff, right, or who are new without a requisite master's degree, we essentially have them go through badges 1 through 6. So these faculty go through an intensive seminar that often takes between 10 and 12 weeks. Online, and what these faculty go through is, again, what is the freshman seminar program, how to develop essentially high impact practice sort of assignments and activities, how to engage with students in the classroom, how to develop syllabi, how to essentially do what we would like them to do within the context of the GPS program. These are designed, as you can see around here, evidence-based best practices, technology, classroom management, inclusive teaching, and then they have a capstone requirement. Once faculty complete this badge 1 through 6, they in turn then are allowed to teach within the GPS program. This was truly designed as a response to ensuring that we have properly trained faculty with the appropriate skill sets, so that way then we can engage more successfully with students in the classroom, and then also in turn retain them hopefully through then their first year. This is a brief example of then what that looks like then for those respective students. So, and I say students because that's what our faculty truly are. They really are students within this specific program. And so this has worked collaboratively really well with FRC. And what we have done over the last 2 years is we have refined this specific teaching model, so that way then we can ensure that our faculty receive the adequate professional development and skills and training before they even start teaching GPS. In addition to that, what we have done is we've increased the professional development to an annual model. And what this has allowed us to do is be more strategic about the types of professional development that we offer our faculty and staff. So in addition to a summer professional development series, which is often used as a preparation model for the upcoming fall semester, this has also allowed us then to expand on a monthly professional development series. So each month we offer 2 series of professional development opportunities. These range, as you can see on the screen, from mental health to syllabi expectations to experiential activities. Again, a range of professional development that is really designed to provide faculty with the skills and the knowledge that they need to engage students successfully within the GPS classroom. Faculty, essentially, these are all a voluntary basis. What we do is we record each of these sessions, and faculty can then participate in person or remotely live. We have also then created an extensive Canvas shelf where faculty essentially can review these materials if they've missed them at a later date for themselves. And again, this really is designed to create a greater and more flexible opportunity for them to attend professional development and an ongoing idea of continuing education. Really, this has increased an awareness of student retention initiatives and issues. Again, ensuring that we are providing them strategic training to potentially mitigate these. And in addition to the normal professional development series, we all have also partnered with other programs on campus. For instance, we did run through a series of Knapsack Institute sessions with that particular program, in which we did send a significant number of our faculty to that Knapsack Institute, so that way they can get a better understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusivity initiatives. And so it's an ongoing professional development process. In addition to that professional development, what we have also done in an effort to ensure that there is a standard academic curricular base for all of our courses is we did create a textbook for all GPS courses. This is a required textbook in GPS programming that focuses not only on the first year experience for students, but in turn introduces them to best practices and high impact practices designed so that way they're more effective, such as habits of mind, key academic skills, and what it truly means to become a learner. Additionally, what we've also done is we partnered with the individuals that you see on the stage here to create meaningful connections and meaningful resources for these students as well as faculty. So that way then there is a true cross-disciplinary environment within GPS. Students, for instance, who need academic advising, students who also need support from first year experience and student success. Again, there's information, there's adequate training provided to faculty and staff on these resources, and in turn, faculty can share these with students as they are also included within this particular textbook. So in addition to forming an academic base, so that way we can ensure that all courses are collectively teaching students within the first year education and curriculum sort of frame of reference, we also have connected them to resources across campus. So what we've done then, in addition to the textbook, is that then we've created an extensive Canvas shell. And we've used Canvas as a repository of course resources for faculty and staff. These resources range essentially from high impact practices, best practices for teaching specific student population, best practices for designing assignments and sequences, capstone projects, etc. All in an effort to provide faculty the adequate support that they need in the event that they should need assistance in developing an assignment, should need assistance in meeting sort of the needs of their specific student population in their courses. And so there's a range of resources on this website for faculty and staff to be able to peruse. They can borrow. Again, these are open educational resources that they can particularly use. So that way they can essentially just drop these into their respective courses should they need to do so. So that essentially explains the basic sort of adjustments to the professional development model that we have gone through for our faculty and our staff. Again, this idea that adequately prepared faculty and staff are then essentially better prepared to meet the needs of our student population, specifically retaining them. In addition to that, what we've also done is we've increased the education, we've increased the professional development of also our peer leaders. We have also, again, we roughly have about 89 peer leaders each fall semester. And what we've done is we've increased the engagement for those students to 5 hours per week. So that way mentors can provide essentially students with the opportunity to meet. Again, this increased 5 hours per week allows them to not only be within the classroom setting with their fellow peers, but also then again have office hours outside. We've found that students benefit from this mentorship role, so that way then often they find it more or easier to communicate with other students like themselves. We've increased then the monthly intensive workshops and trainings for these peer leaders, so that way then that we can ensure that they are adequately prepared and trained to engage with students in the classroom. What we've also done is we've expanded our GPS course roles, and we've also developed new course models. So just a quick fact, we often see, so this past fall, we saw 1,902 freshmen. Again, in the spring, we saw 241 freshmen. Of this total number, 372 of these students are enrolled in the university studies pathway sequences. And 90%, 2% of all of our courses are in person, with 8% of them being synchronous or online. And so this is just a quick sort of breakdown of what that looks like on a sort of fall basis. In addition to that, we have created an extensive Gateway Days model. Gateway Days is an immersive experience designed to provide first-year students at UCCS with access to classes, resources, and activities. All of this happens pre-term to the start of the fall semester. So 2 days prior to the start of the fall semester, all freshmen are required to attend Gateway Days. What this has allowed us to do is to expand and provide an intensive focus on skills and resources, on platform learning, increase a sense of belonging and student engagement, and then also increase sort of awareness of mental health and campus safety. These 2 days are very rigorous for our students. They essentially transpire from 8 until 5 p.m. each day on the Thursday and Friday before the start of the fall semester. Not only are students within the classroom learning, but they are also actively engaging with other programs on campus in an effort to get them better connected to campus, follow suit with high impact practices, and more specifically, again, retain them and provide them an experience that hopefully, again, we will see them return past the fall or spring semesters. So specifically then thinking about the changes that we've made to GPS in relation to the SIP grant, what we have done is we've expanded the summer bridge model. So previously the summer bridge model originally when the SIP grant was instituted on campus essentially was a 3-week model. Unfortunately for sustainability practices, that model essentially was modified to then be a 1-week model for 40 credit hours. So that way then students essentially can get in within the 1 week, have an intensive experience, right? And then again, also not conflict with other contextual factors outside of the classroom that these students essentially were immersed with, such as working full time or family obligations. The 40 credit model is an 8 to 5 p.m. intensive course, activities that then connect these students with advising faculty and staff, peer mentoring, a first-year office of first-year experience and student success, service learning, and participation in campus organizations such as UCCS LEAD. What we've seen essentially is that the data, as it was presented earlier, is that these students who are enrolled within the Summer Bridge program, specifically the Mountain Lion 360 program, part of the SIP grant, 85.5% of these students essentially were retained, and so the retention data essentially shows that. What is essentially exciting is that we have taken that Summer Bridge experience in that 1-week model, and we have expanded that to 5 other sections at UCCS, all of these designed around a meta major focus. And again, the retention numbers are then reflected in that 86.4% of all the students who took a fall 2019 course were retained through fall of 2020. So again, it's exciting that we're nearly seeing 90% of the students who were enrolled within a 1-week format are then being retained then for the following year. So they're coming back. And again, which is truly exciting. In addition to that, what we've done to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our student populations is that we've created 2 new sequences. The first essentially is a GPS 1020 perspectives model. This course is designed for students who possess prior college experience, those students who are non-traditional, those students maybe who, again, are transfer students. And this course essentially follows an accelerated model of GPS, all designed essentially to provide them sort of an academically rigorous sort of course designed to challenge them to be creative and sort of interact essentially with the broader UCCS community and grow both academically and professionally. In addition to that, what we've done is also strategically create a 30-10 model. This course is designed for students with professional and life experience who essentially are new to college. So this course, unlike the 10-20 model, this course is really designed for non-traditional students who are working or particularly maybe have some military experience or have some life experience outside of higher ed. this class is really designed to emphasize, their previous knowledge and help them to really expand more on a holistic learning environment about higher education and what they can do with their previous knowledge and expand that at UCCS. More specifically, the university studies model, as well as the former Finding Your Way model and also the leadership models, we have revised these specific formats, and we essentially have partnered then with the Career Center as well as academic advising and first year experience to create sort of courses that more emphasize the inclusive nature of getting students connected to campus and more specifically getting them connected earlier to the idea of career exploration. And so what we're doing currently right now is we are essentially piloting these courses this fall as we have just recently redesigned this specific course sequence. So these are the GPS 1010 pathways models. These are for our intent students, and so we've created pathways around specific disciplinary designations, such as the healthcare one here on the screen, designed to really explore what that means and the intersection, for instance, of nursing and that transition into higher ed. The pathways models then that were formerly leadership models then have then this design career focus within them. So really sort of getting students connected to exercises, self-reflection, and group interaction in an effort to explore pathways to careers. What we've seen within the research is that the earlier that students get on a career trajectory or thinking about career trajectories, the then greater that we are retaining them through their first year. And so this has really been a collaborative and interactive process with other stakeholders on campus to truly design these respective programs. So again, just to give you a quick sort of highlight of this, the reformer sort of retention ranges for the intent courses prior to fall of 2021 essentially range from 69% to a high of 80%, and these are our university intent students. The former leadership model essentially was slightly lower from a 56.9% to a high of 60.1%. Again, with the idea that this fall there were no conditional admit plans sort of instituted. And so what we're really trying to do is focus on these sort of numbers, specifically the lower ones, and really attempt to engage students strategically in raising sort of that active engagement so that way then we can retain these students. I won't necessarily go into what this looks like. Again, you can view this on the presentation that I've attached, but in comparing the curricular models between the two, here then you'll be able to then sort of get a better idea of the logic behind, again, the curricular redesign and essentially then what we specifically essentially did to focus on those high impact practices and best practices for redesigning these specific sequences using national trends as well as using sort of best practice models here at campus already. And so then there's a brief preview of what that pathways to success model looks like. But we're really hoping, like I said, to increase sort of that retention model through the fall. And what we're really planning to do and what we have at the moment currently working with is we are working again with the individuals on this stage here to ensure that our students are essentially well prepared for those academic expectations moving beyond year one. In addition to that, we will increase and having continue to do so the professional development that we are teaching our GPS faculty to engage with those students. So thinking then very quickly beyond what that looks like, what then the SIP grant really has created is an opportunity for us to continue to explore other strategic enrollment initiatives that impact or in turn can have a direct result in retention, and these include a revision to our academic fitness models. So these one credit GPS courses designed for students on academic probation. We have redesigned this course and have improved retention from a low of 34.6% in the fall of, in the spring of 2019 to a high of 74.6%. Again, this past year. We have now developed a partnership with the UCCS Pre-Collegiate to provide summer workshop series on scholarship writing for these respective students. We've also begun a partnership with the UCSys Extended Studies to offer a 4-week online course for rising seniors, an academic fitness model designed to prepare them for the expectations of post-secondary instruction and to connect them to UCSys faculty and support services. And finally, we partnered with Fort Carson and UCSS Veteran and Military Affairs programming to create courses on base which are better tailored to the needs of the veteran and military dependent populations. And so because of the SIP grant and again, the experience that we've had and sort of the impetus and the challenge for sort of reinvigorating and revising the GPS program, these are a continued effort to meet the needs of our student populations. And I'm done. Thank you so much, everyone, for everything. I believe I will save any questions for later as I try to rush very quickly through that presentation. So I turn then the presentation over to my colleagues on the stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Omar. That's a great view. I mean, we love what you're doing in GPS. GPS is really the front door to the curricular side of UCCS, and we see the impact it has on students every day. So thank you. A little bit about what advising is doing. One of the initiatives we have going right now, and it's still in its pilot stage, is our meta majors. So if you have worked with first-year students, you know that they do not have life figured out. And many of them who think they have life figured out find out later they do not have life figured out. So how do we advise for that, right? And you or I probably, if we were meeting with a student, we would say, it's okay. You do not have to have life figured out. However, if we're honest, systemically, we think students should have life figured out. You look at our advising guides, you look at how majors are set up, and it starts from day one. You have a major, and here is your 4-year plan to graduation. We have a lot of families and other constituents telling students they need to have life figured out, right? We have many students who come to UCCS for a job. And we can, till we're blue in the face, tell students you're here to become a lifelong learner and value education and all these great, amazing things. And a lot do. And a lot come to kind of learn that that's part of what higher education is all about. But at the end of the day, especially with many of our first generation students, they're here to be a nurse. They're here to be an engineer. They're here to be a teacher, right? They're here first because they know I'm coming to college for a job to better myself, better my family, all these great things. And that's what I want to do. Well, what happens when life kind of gets in the way of that plan? Or we're not sure what our plan is. So advising is like, okay, how do we do this? How do we enter in where a student is at, but help them understand that there is more to college than just that one particular job? And if life isn't working out quite the way you expected, that's okay too. How do we have a place for students to land? How do we have a place for students to feel like they have a home curricularly and co-curricularly, even if they're not sure where life is taking them at the moment? And so with that in mind, we created this, this project around meta majors. We had kind of 4 main areas we wanted to focus on. We want to provide students with a clearer pathway towards major selection, right? If a student is undecided, rather than coming in as undecided and saying, I'm just going to take some random gen eds and figure it out along the way, how do we create a home for those students? How do we help them choose courses that will work for general education, but also maybe help them explore and look at some potential majors, right? We have a great campus-wide Compass Curriculum general education program that allows students to kind of enter into our majors. So how can we help explore that? How can we create a sense of belonging there for our students who are undecided? So we want to help those students make those connections, right, between their studies and major and career down the road. We also know that some students need help expanding their understanding of majors and careers and opportunities, right? For a lot of our students, maybe what they're entering in as is not the right fit. But maybe if they take a bigger view, they can see something that is a good fit for them, right? So, if we have a nursing student who's afraid of the sight of blood, well, maybe we need to talk about that a little bit, right? And maybe we need to look more at health. And how do we help people in the health field, right? Because you're here as a nurse, you want to help people, you like this idea of health. So how do we expand that notion, right? And that's kind of what meta majors is all about. Is kind of both helping students narrow things down, right? I need to narrow things down into a meta major, or I need to expand things out. And so, and of course, along with that is because it is so challenging for students who, because of how we have our system set up and our major set up, we can't just explore for a few years and then land on something and graduate in 4 years. We want to make sure that those classes students are taking are going to work towards those areas. So with that, we created meta majors. They're kind of like guided pathways or career pieces, but really one of the things they do is they help students have a home. They help students understand that they can be taking courses and figuring out life at the same time, that they don't need to pause their education to make progress, right? And along with, Career Center and advising and GPS and FYE and others, there's a whole team that's here to help them with that exploration. Whether they need to narrow things down into a major or they need to peel things back like I did. I got into calculus 2 and said, nope, engineering is not for me, right? So now who am I, right? My identity on campus has been an engineer. Everyone asks me, the second question they ask me is, what are you majoring in, right? We all do that. That's a natural conversation we have. Well, what does that mean for our students who are still exploring? So what we've done is we've created a series of 6 kind of meta major pathways, right? Arts, humanities, and media, business and entrepreneurship, education and teaching, health, STEM, and kind of society, behavior, and public service. And we created these in conjunction with our colleges and our associate deans, because the reality is students don't see their pathway as being college specific, right? If we're thinking health, that's health and teaching, right? There's health coaching going on at the corporate level in the nonprofit world. There's more science majors in health. There's, the College of Nursing and Health Sciences. There's all these colleges that participate in health careers, right? There's all these colleges that participate in STEM. STEM is not just engineering, but many of our students think STEM, engineering, and done. What about geography, environmental sciences, right? What about all the cool stuff with GIS that they're doing through there, right? What about technical communication and information design? What about our more kind of science-heavy business areas like accounting or finance, right? Or information systems, right? How does computer science play? And it's great, kind of some of the work that's being done. We need to have those conversations with students and expand that understanding. And so basically what Meta Majors is it's an advising tool that allows us to kind of help students kind of say, here's my home, here's what I want to explore. It gives them some words and some terminology, then communicate that back out to the people that are supporting them. And it allows them to kind of have that space and that margin, if you will, to make progress while also still not having life completely figured out. And so it's been a great tool for us in advising because it allows us to have those conversations. Whether a student knows they don't know what they know, or they're not ready to declare something yet, but they want to kind of make progress, or all of a sudden they find themselves in a transition point. Anatomy and physiology didn't go so well this semester. Well, let's talk more about that. Let's talk more about the why of nursing, or let's talk more about what you're thinking about. And hey, what are some other areas that you might be able to explore if you're thinking that this might not be the right fit? So that's kind of where we're at. We've piloted this first in fall of 2019, starting with some Excel spreadsheets of trying to kind of capture our students who are undecided and into this. Now we use a service indicator so we can mark students in our PeopleSoft or CUSys information system and pull that out. But we still have a long way to go. And some of that is stuff we'll be developing and advising. We need, this is part of a bigger picture of us working towards really mapping the student's journey and understanding where we want to enter in and the outcomes we want out of our interventions. And then also campus is kind of at a point where it's starting to look at, as part of this new budget model and other pieces, campus is also considering what do we do with students who are not yet admitted into their college of choice or who are undecided, right? And for the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've been doing something called university studies. So if you're undecided, if you want to be a business student but you're not admitted to College of Business, or or if you're a conditional admit, you've heard those terms a few times, right? That's our university studies. That's really the group that fits well in this meta majors piece. And so we're hoping to continue to dialogue with colleges and with the university around how do we help students have a home, and how do we help make sure that the curriculum and the co-curricular components of your all's majors are as accessible as they can be for those students who are still exploring? And how can we help students make progress even if they don't have life figured out? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ellen Burkhart, and I'm the director for first year experience in parent and family programs. And I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Gaddis while she was in our office, kind of starting the SIP grant and moving forward. So this has been kind of an exciting thing for me to carry on in terms of a legacy of Barbara's. But I'm going to talk a little bit about our early alert program and why we do it, the history of it, and where we are going with it. Brett talked a lot about students needing that home or that sense of belonging, and that goes on an individual level in terms of student support too. We know that students who make a connection somewhere on campus, and often it doesn't even matter where on campus they make that connection, but as long as they make a connection, they do better. And so when we're thinking about students who may be struggling in a class, it might show up as a test. They didn't do well on a test or quiz score. And so we need a way to help students not only just connect with their faculty, but also other support on campus, because we know if they meet with people on campus and get the support that they need, that they're going to do better. So if you go way back, I think it even predates me working at UCCS. It used to be that our early alert system was send an email to Dr. Gaddis with a spreadsheet, and then she would have a group of students call these other students to see how we could connect them. Then we had a homegrown early alert technology system where faculty could submit an alert. And then for the most part, it was our office calling people to say, hey, can you help us with this student? And so there was still a lot of legwork involved. And so as we have a university that continues to grow, and we've gone through significant growth over the past decade, we needed something that made it a little bit easier. So the SIP grant, we ended up getting Starfish Early Alert. And so basically that has allowed faculty to submit alerts and then us to have a way to track where those students are. It's not perfect, but it's been helpful because we can get a list of students, and let's say we've come up with an intervention plan where all first year students that have a low assignment score, aren't spending enough time on their work, etc., that would be assigned to a peer coach in first year experience. So then the peer coaches in my office will reach out to those students and schedule a meeting. And what we're finding is that while we do get them connected with the Excel centers and other resources, the holistic conversation from a peer is really helpful because they share with a peer very differently than they might share with Brett or Kayleen or anyone else. And so we do get the story of maybe it was they didn't get something turned in because life was happening on the other side. And then hearing from a peer, I really think these are the resources that you can connect with, and then I'm going to follow up with you, makes a big difference. The other pieces that we have is if a student gets a cannot pass, they cannot pass the class. It is mathematically impossible. They've gotten to the point where they can't pass. That alert will go to Brett's team over in advising, and then they can have the conversation, again, a holistic conversation of the why, but also talk with what are you able to drop the course? What is the impact of dropping this course on your degree plan? And how might we explore differently whether or not this is even the right major for you or other things? So it ties back into a lot of those other pieces. So a lot of the things that we learned in our Starfish model and that we're going to be continuing to work on is still tracking. In Starfish, we could only see if things were active and resolved, and so we're still trying to figure out some of the caseload management pieces on our end. But we did learn that progress surveys are the way to go with faculty submitting alerts. That's if they can go in and quickly go through and select who is not doing well here, add a few comments and submit it 3 times a semester instead of manually having to remember, oh yeah, I got to go in and do that. We get a lot more participation. In fact, we've had a little over 45% increase of faculty using Starfish now than when we started in fall of 2017. So we're seeing a lot of really cool things happening. The other pieces that we're noticing is that faculty like to give good news too. So we are finding that over our kudos, where faculty can say, hey, you're doing a good job, that's increased over 125%. So, and students are reacting well to that. They like to know where they're doing well, not just when they're not doing well. We've also had an increase in students, but only by 25%. So it does seem that a lot of the students that are getting alerts are alerted in multiple classes, which makes sense when we're getting a ton more flags, but not seeing the students rise at that same level. So it's great to get all that information and to have it. And then we're going to be continuing to figure out what that intervention model looks like. We are moving over into a new platform campus-wide that is supported with our CRM, so we can get that whole journey of the student life cycle. And it's been great because we've learned a lot through our Starfish plan, but we'll be moving over into Salesforce Advisor Link, which should help us to connect those pieces even more, where we can see, oh, this student had a conversation with Sean Dean in the math center about this. Well, I don't want to have that same exact conversation with the student, but I might ask that student, how did your conversation go with Sean? And they might say, well, Sean's amazing, and want to keep working. So I can call Sean and say, hey, let's partner with support on this student. So it really is just a fantastic way to bring everything together and to open up those communication lines and to help students get connected to our resources on campus.
All right. I think we have a little time for questions. I think I saw one come in on the chat. Is there one on the chat, Deborah? No? Any other questions? Okay.
So of course I have a question. No, this is all amazing, and it really is so helpful to hear it laid out in summary fashion like this. So thank you for being here and for sharing all of this wonderful information. I want to touch on something Megan said earlier about communication and alignment. And I'm just wondering, what sort of kind of reports might you envision that could go to campus leadership, deans, department chairs, program directors, right, to really get a sense of sort of what kinds of things are helping, and just to keep this communication going in a way that will allow us to leverage all of these investments in a sustainable way.
I think that a lot of it is reporting back and having a certain time frame that we are reporting back our efforts. I think that one of the communication tools that has helped us leverage Starfish a little bit differently, and where we did see a difference in faculty utilization, was really meeting with that retention and graduation subcommittee and pulling together faculty to be our voices for faculty. Because me saying one thing and talking from the student affairs side is very different than them saying this is how you can also get extra support for your students. And that has made a difference. So I think if we can leverage those summaries and maybe even come up with a timeline of once a semester or once a quarter, and have some dates that we're pulling that information together to hold us accountable to that, because we all are busy and we all wear many hats, but having those dates in advance that we're reminded of so that we can get that data pulled. I think that's the hardest part, is just setting aside the time to put the documents together that we can then share out. Because I think once we hear it and once we share it, people get really excited about it, because we are doing really good things.
I think that's also something that I think we need to take forward to in kind of think about. We have the retention and graduation subcommittee, and in some ways that's done a really good job of looking at kind of across campus challenges, right? Like grade forgiveness and other pieces, or maybe in specific areas. But I think one of the challenges is college by college or even major by major. To me, the next question that we need to tackle is how are our students, what is their journey, right? And where are their exit points and where are their entrance points? And how can we make that a more supportive and engaging and environment? Where are the interventions? And so to me, that's part of that is how does, you know, student affairs division and college of ed partner? How does student affairs and SPA partner, right? And so, you know, one of the things I love about centralized advising is it creates that partnership somewhat somewhat natively in terms of just, you know, it's a natural connection, but I do think we have room to grow in that, and I think that is something where we need to continue to advocate for meeting at that one-on-one level, but also I think campus could frankly invest more in understanding that partnership, right? You know, we lack some, I would say, executive leadership in retention right now that allows us to more easily create those crosswalks. And, you know, I don't have, that's out of my job responsibility, but that would be something I would advocate for as part of the retention and graduation. And maybe that is the answer, right? That subcommittee starts looking at things on a more college by college basis. And there is good news that there will be a kind of retention analyst coming out of some President's Initiative Fund money. And I do think that could play a strong role. And that might be one of the first things we start digging into is how do we understand our students, not just from all of our freshmen or from this group of undecided, but really, you know, what is this group doing versus that, and how are they entering and exiting the opportunities we have?
Any other questions? I think our time is up. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming, and we've talked a lot about activity 1, which was great, and now we're going to spend more time on activity 2. I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves first before we start. So, Sean?
Okay. Hello, my name is Sean Dean. I'm the Assistant Director in the Excel Mathematics Center.
Hi, I'm Catherine Cliff. I'm a senior instructor in the math department, and I worked on some course redesign.
Hi, I'm Jenny Dorrington. I'm the director of the Excel Math Center.
I'm Elise Naughton. I'm a senior instructor in the chemistry department, and I also worked on some course redesign.
Hi, I'm Christy McCann. I'm a senior instructor in the chemistry and biochemistry department and course redesign, and I'm also a lecturer in the Department of Teaching and Learning.
Hello, everyone. My name is Philip Morris, and I'm an assistant professor in leadership research and foundations. A lot of people probably know me for my role in working with veteran and military affairs on campus, but simultaneously, I was the co-principal investigator and co-author for the SIP grant. I had recently, back in 2013, we're going pretty far back, but had recently completed my doctoral dissertation, and I looked at curriculum redesign math specifically in Gateway College math classes. So try to translate that into the grant proposal and think about ways we could help support UCCS students with BARD. And I'm just going to say a few comments and then pass it over to Barb to finish it up. But before I get into that, I want to just thank Dr. Valerie Martin Conley for having, you know, sort of the vision and leadership to bring this together, because we've had this grant on campus for quite a while, you know, and I think people, as Dr. Bell had mentioned, people didn't really know about this project and the great work that was happening. So it's really encouraging to see this culminating summit and share out our research findings and all that's going on. And so just a little bit about the courses that were chosen. So we really wanted to look at the high DFW courses, drop, fail, withdraw courses. So, as we talked a lot about the intent, nursing intent, engineering intent, business intent, those were the courses that we looked at, or the students that we looked at. And what were the courses that were really tripping these students up? So college algebra, pre-calculus, anatomy and physiology, these were the early courses that we really focused on. And so one of my roles was just bringing some best practices and some ideas to the faculty and to the department chairs, and liaisoning with the department chairs about what could be done. Really what we wrote in the grant around the curriculum redesign, it was loosely implemented, but we discovered that as long as we kept the intent of the project, we could really let our departments and the faculty really apply what is going to work on our campus. So as liaisoning, I was kind of a sounding board as well, like thinking about how we could translate this to the U.S. Department of Education, what we were doing. Another thing I was able to do was look at do some research on our math courses. So from 2015 to 2018, I looked at our pre-calc and college algebra student outcomes, comparing the SIP students and the non-SIP students. There were 325 in the sample that I looked at. There were 325 SIP enrolled students, and there was around 2,700 non-SIP students in the data set. We compared outcomes both on grades and scores on common final exam questions. Really, to better isolate the impact of the SIP instruction, we statistically controlled for teaching and classroom characteristics as well as student background characteristics. So we wanted to really think about the incoming students. We know that we can look at success rates comparing sections, but we really wanted to isolate the impact of the SIP curriculum redesign, right? So thinking about controlling for the instruction, controlling for the incoming math ability. So really in a statistical model trying to do all that. So we did that. Students enrolled in college algebra were 3 times as likely to pass if they were enrolled in SIP intervention sections. And this is measured as odds ratios for those stats folks out there as a hierarchical logistic regression model. In terms of pre-calculus, students were roughly equivalent in terms of their odds of passing the course, but they were statistically higher in terms of the common final exam questions. So both at least from the research finding we found, comparing these students, with controlling for background characteristics, the SIP intervention did work. So that was encouraging to see that. And there's a manuscript out there that we're still waiting on our review, about 8 months now that it's been under review. So really looking forward to getting that feedback. But I'm going to stop there and turn it over to Barb. But yeah, so it's been great to work with all these folks, and a shout out to the Math Center, Dr. Dorrington and Sean and all the math folks that were able to really collect all that data. That was a huge effort. So that was really appreciate that, guys, with that work. So.
You bet. And we are so grateful, actually, to all the course designers. It has worked very, very well, and we're doing more analysis on it. But the students who come into the redesigned courses, whether they're math or chemistry, do better, they earn higher grades, they progress to the next level class, which was really important to us, and they are retained. And I think that is due to many factors, but not the least to a great team of faculty who really worked hard to make this just a great experience for the students. And I want you to hear more about that. Okay, so we're going to do quick introductions and then talk about the math first, because Sean has to go and teach, very dedicated, and then we will finish with chemistry.
So hi, again, I'm Catherine Cliff, and I worked on the course redesign for Math 1050, which is the pre-calculus course. My colleague, Shannon Michaud, really led the way for the SIP grant in the math department before me, working on 1040, the college algebra course. So these two courses, they really are kind of where a lot of students end up, either on their path to a statistics course in their own major or a calculus course within the math department. And so part of what the math department was really interested in was creating stronger students leading up to that calculus one, not just getting students through the courses, but making sure they're as prepared as possible for those subsequent calculus courses. So part of what Shannon did on college algebra was we were able to increase the credit hours for that course from 3 credit hours to 4 credit hours, which just, there's so much content in these courses, you guys. And so just having a little bit of extra time really freed up some time to do more interactive activities, more active learning within the classroom. It allowed her to spend time talking about a growth mindset and how to be a student and all of those types of things, which we know that the freshmen, particularly who take this course, they really need support on. She started kind of taking what she had and expanding it out and teaching other part-time instructors within the math department who largely these 2 courses are taught by part-time adjuncts and grad students. So she expanded the course with a couple of them, gave them a lot of the resources she had developed, and started expanding what we had from there. Then a couple of years in, I was asked to work on 1050, which is pre-calculus, and just very little background there. Pre-calculus has absolutely everything in it that college algebra does, plus trigonometry, and trig is hard, and so it's just a lot. So again, we were able to expand that course from 4 credit hours to 5 credit hours because of the grant, which was wonderful. However, nearly impossible to schedule on this campus. So a year into the redesign process for that course, I was able to pare down a lot of the content. So I spoke with the Calc 1 instructors about what students really, really need to be strong in to do well in Calc 1, and really pared down the course to kind of those essentials and really emphasized the trig portion of the class. And so kind of the results of all of that is we did end up redesigning both of those courses permanently, and that is happening right now. This is our first semester, which on the back of a pandemic is interesting, but 1040 is now permanently 4 credit hours, and pre-calc no longer exists. We have converted that to just a trigonometry course. And I'm currently teaching the trig course and in close contact with the other people teaching it. And from a teacher side, it's worlds better. We can actually do a good job teaching. We just had our first exam, and we have a standardized course bank for that. And we have like an 85% course average on that first exam, which is just like, it's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. I'm also working closely with a lot of our grad students who are teaching 1040 under this new expanded format. We were able to hand them a lot of pre-made active learning activities that they can use, and they have been using. And so far, I haven't heard back from their exam 1 yet, but their experience as first-time grad students teaching this is, I can just see the difference in stress level from previous years. Just having that gift of more time has been huge. So the SIP grant really kind of gave us the data to bring these changes to the department and say, look, we know this results in better student abilities from these common exam questions. So it really allowed us to make this push to make these changes and make these courses better.
So I'm going to talk a bit about part of the course redesign that went hand in hand with the increased use of interactive activities in class was peer support. So the peer support built on something that already existed in the department. We'd had peer-assisted study sessions offered by the Math Center and the Math Department since about 2008, even earlier. But with the course redesign, we saw an opportunity to really deepen the interactions that could happen in the classroom and outside of the classroom between the students in the classes and these trained peer leaders. So I think we had two overall goals going in, and that was we put 2 peer leaders in each section in order to really have this relationship building happening between the peer leaders and the students to help the students see the benefit in going to their peers for assistance. So they would go to the sessions outside of class, but they also helped out a lot, the leaders did in the class, running these interactive activities. And again, I think it's been mentioned a couple of times, but coming from a peer, it just clicks, I think, so much better for a student. So that was our goal, and the training and the design of what these leaders would do in class, I'm going to have Sean talk about more.
Thank you. So, like Jenny said, the peer leaders were embedded in these 2 courses. So just some brief history of the past program that existed before. Past leaders are assigned to most sections of mathematics courses here from the Math Center, but they are spread out across. So one leader might be assigned to 3 sections of college algebra in terms of what we're able to fund. And so the training is still very similar to what the SIP leaders would have gotten, but they are attached to more students. Right? And so there's less kind of in-course embedding because they have to split their time across more sections. But that training looks like a combination of focusing both on content interaction, right? How do you work with students on the content that they're trying to learn, but also focusing on how to learn, right? Study skills and kind of ways of interacting with students to help them build their independence as learners, and developing strategies that help them kind of not need us anymore in terms of what they're able to do, right? And that training is kind of frameworked by behavioral learning theory, cognitive development theory, critical and interpretive theory, and also social interdependence theory. So we kind of take the ideas from those to kind of shape the training and make sure students are getting what they need to interact with these students in their college courses. And then we also focus on mentoring, right? How do you talk to students? What language do you use? And how do you foster growth mindset in these students, particularly with mathematics, where we see a lot of students sometimes really shut down and avoid engaging in mathematics because they're not a math person or they just can't do math, right? And so helping the leaders have the language and the skills to talk with students and kind of help them take progressive steps to develop that is part of the training. Traditionally, PASSES is marketed as a voluntary supplemental support for students, and so it enjoys a non-remedial point of view, right? This is offered for your class because the class is hard, not because you as a student are deficient or unable to complete the tasks. And so kind of taking that and adapting it to SIP, there were just a couple of changes that we did for the 4-credit college algebra and the 1050 class. And so that was, we embedded 2 leaders in each section. So those 30 students-ish got 2 PASS leaders. And those were only for those students. So those sessions were specifically for that section. And then the leaders worked with the instructors to do in-course activities, collaborate with the instructors during lectures, and then also had access to student information like through the grade book. Right? So normally, PASS leaders hold 2 study sessions each week, so they have an hour-and-a-half session twice a week. And in the SIP sections, we modified that so it was 1 collaborative session, and then they held 1 office hour. And so that allowed us to do both the collaborative component of PASS, where students get together, engage with each other, and kind of explore the content on their own with each other and the PASS leaders facilitation, but then also that one-on-one direct kind of just-in-time intervention, right? Like, what do you need to work on right now? What questions do you have specifically about this? And then the PASS leaders, because they could see the gradebook, could target those students who maybe performed below a certain cutoff on a test to do that kind of direct intervention. And so there was some balancing that we don't want you to feel targeted because you're not performing well, right? We don't want to say you suck, so come to these sessions. But we also wanted to provide that intervention as a way of supporting them through that, right? Helping them say, like, that test didn't go the way you wanted, but let's kind of work together to figure out what you can do to get where you want to go. And so there was a larger focus on the student intervention based on actual feedback from course grades and assignments. And I think I've covered everything. So I'm going to pass it on to chemistry.
I'm too excited I have to stand. Rarely do I have a crowd to hear all the fun work that we've been doing in chemistry, so I'm going to take advantage of it. I would like to start by acknowledging Nikki Jewell, who began the redesign journey with me and who, without her, the program would not have been as successful or as far-reaching. Just to give you a little bit of background, our Introduction to Chemistry, Organic, and Biochem is a year-long course geared towards pre-nursing majors. And historically, the course has had much higher DFW rates and lower success rates for students. We teach a combination of nursing prep, our 4-year plan students, nursing intense, the 5-year students, and a decent amount of university studies or conditionally admitted students. And Nikki's 8 a.m. chemistry section was always the last to fill. I have no idea why. But it always filled with a disproportionately higher number of these conditionally admitted students as well. So we had kind of some interesting dynamics going on. Students who enter chemistry have a very large range of academic skills and experiences with chemistry. This combined with the difficulty of a large lecture in the sciences and students not identifying as being STEM majors pretty much meant that the course was due for an overhaul. The first steps we took were to replace half of the in-person lectures with podcasts, and this opened up class time for active learning. Nikki created a document called a guided practice, which had problem sets, and they were scaffolded, so they got more difficult as you went down the list of problems. And these were used both in class and out of class, and keys were provided for students. And in class, we focused on group problem-solving strategies. We wanted the students to collaborate. We wanted them to talk to each other. We wanted them to talk about how they approached and solved problems. And we failed. So first and foremost, our students who entered chemistry with less prior experience in chemistry and the students that struggled with academic skills like time management, they had poor study habits. They weren't watching the podcasts. So we made them worse off. They got no lecture. The stronger students, though, did absolutely fine. Whatever hoop we gave them, they jumped through. It was great. So we had to pivot to get those students with the lesser skills. And we added in podcast questions at the end of the podcast. They should have been real easy if they watched the video, and they had 2 attempts for these. After their final attempt, they did get feedback on what was incorrect, so it gave them immediate feedback on what they were doing wrong. And we also attached just a couple points to it, and that was enough to get those intent and our conditional students to start watching those, and it closed the gap for a lot of students. It especially affected the intent and conditional students who weren't spending the time watching the podcast, and they also weren't interacting with the material enough outside of class either. So the next issue became the ratio of students to teachers. We teach lecture sections over 115 to 1 is our ratio. And we've provided students with all this practice time, and there's only one of me to go around to all these students. So we took a note from the math department, and we added in our version of peer leaders. And these are students who were previously successful in Introduction to Chemistry. We didn't want perfection, and we didn't want chem majors. We wanted students that were just like the students we were trying to help. And if they struggled in the course and found success, we especially wanted those students because our students would relate to that. They were trained in helping guide students to find answers. We met weekly to talk about the class, to talk about strategies, to do outreach for our students.
And the peer leaders took on creating study sessions they held in the Science Center as well as office hours. So it just provided more opportunities for our students to get help from someone, whether it was me or a student that they could better understand, whatever the case was. In the season of COVID, students in my lecture section surprisingly and somewhat seamlessly were able to transition to online and remote learning. So we took the 50% of podcasts that would have still been in class, we just made them all online podcasts. Watch them when you can, watch them when it works for you. It's a pandemic. We'll come to class during class time online and we'll just work problems. We'll ask questions and we'll try to connect as human beings in this really interesting time. Students could ask questions, they could work problems in the guided practice, and this is the model that we're currently still using. So it is a completely flipped classroom, and class time is just for talking about problem solving, how to get through difficult problems, and practicing the tough stuff that you don't want them to do on their own or they need more guidance on their own. We found that intent and conditional students have benefited the most from the redesign, suggesting it might be a model to reach struggling students in the sciences as well as our STEM adjacent students, such as those entering nursing. And I do want to take just a quick second to give the most heartfelt thank you to Dr. Philip Morris and Dr. Barb Gaddis for bringing on the chemistry department. This has not only changed the trajectory of my career, but also my academic career as well. So thank you for taking us on.
All right, so I'm Elise Naughton, and I teach general chemistry. And we dropped our prerequisites for general chemistry in the spring of 2020. So I was not at the beginning of this grant. I was approached by Barb Gaddis and Jerry Phillips from the Science Excel Center in the very beginning of the spring 2020 semester and asked to come on, since now we could with general chemistry. And I was really lucky because Christy did all of the hard work for me. So she failed for me, exactly. So we came in with her model initially, which was to make the small videos, shorter videos that were 10 to 15 minutes long, questions at the end of them. So we had curriculum designers that we had come in from they were senior chemistry students who were writing questions based on my lectures. And they did a fantastic job. They were amazing, especially during COVID. I needed them. So they were wonderful to have. And Dr. Oppenheim in our department has also developed some of this. They also wrote problem sets for our students. So the idea was that we were having them work online and go through the videos and work through all of these quizzes. And then we would meet together in Teams or Zoom during our class times to try and work through some of these problem sets. And the idea originally was to do this in person. So we eventually ended up being in breakout rooms, which worked okay. I think I'm excited to see how it goes when we eventually can do this in person. But we don't have a lot of data because everything changed, because spring 2020 is when everything happened. So, but qualitatively, it seems to be that it's working well. And the students seem to be excited about it. Watching students in groups has been really helpful. Some of my students that weren't doing as well, I would put into groups with students who I know were excelling. And you could see some of my A students are now teaching, lower C, D students some of those problems, which is beneficial for all of them. So I do think it's been helping quite a bit. And I also want to thank you, Dr. Gaddis, for bringing me on.
Well, very, very cool. Well, we'll open this up for questions in just a minute. I just want to give a quick shout out to a bunch of people. I'm not going to name them all by name, but one of the things I think is so exciting about the work that these and others have done is we've taken an idea from a grant to make it better for students, and these are now incorporated into UCCS. So the math courses have changed. The chemistry department, we had other people working on course design. They saw what was being done and they said, I want to do this too. So we have now, at least in every introductory level class, and we have a number of those, at least one flipped section. And the faculty have worked really, really hard doing that. So I really want to give a big shout out to all of you, and then ask if there are any questions, because my hope is that there are going to be a lot of questions for the faculty, because you hear this and you think, boy, that would work really well in my class. So if you are faculty and want to do something similar, first of all, I know these and the other people who've worked on the grant would be happy to talk with you about ideas. So the Susan, I'm totally blanking out, the Faculty Resource Center. You can call up there and they have people who can work with you to help you redesign your course. And then the other help for you is Dr. Jerry Phillips of the Excel Centers. He is happy to work with you to figure out different interactions of peer modeling, peer responses. Like you've heard, we had a couple different models. So all that help is available for you should you just get so inspired by hearing all these people today that this is something that you want to do as well. So questions. You have questions for the panelists? Oh, okay. I thought someone came in with a question. Okay. Is there anything you want to say? And maybe a question that ties into other faculty doing it. Like if you were starting this over, tomorrow is your first day doing this, what would you, if anything, do differently?
If there's anyone who is interested in doing this, please remember that Rome was not built in a day. And we had a lot of support and we had a lot of failed attempts, and you just have to take little tiny chunks at a time and adjust every other week, every other unit, just baby steps.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. It was a journey, not something that happened overnight for sure. I also forgot to earlier thank some more of the people from the math department who helped out with this. I just want to give acknowledgement to the various people who taught different sections of this. We had some grad students, Michael Zawada and Shane Richmond, who taught sections of SIP courses. Which being a grad student is busy in the first place. And then we were kind of asking them to take on some extra stuff, and they did an amazing job. A former colleague, Teresa Killebrew, was also instrumental in developing a lot of the active learning resources and activities that we were able to incorporate. And then I want to shout out personally my past leaders, Chase Metier and Jimmy Costa, who were phenomenal. It wasn't like having two undergrads in my courses. It was like having really good student teachers. They were amazing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. If there are no more questions, did you want to? Okay, so you looked eager, Elise. I thought you wanted to jump in. So, and I know if you just want to talk to people here, kind of even individually at the end, they'd be happy to answer any questions that you have too. So, thank you. So, I just want to very briefly say thank you. Thank you to everyone who has shared all of their experiences as a result of working as part of the SIP grant. I'd also like to thank everyone who has been tuning in online. I want to say thank you again to Dr. Glenn James for giving of his time and expertise to us today as well. And finally, I want to thank the U.S. Department of Education for their support to UCCS through the Strengthening Institutional Programs grant. As hopefully our project officer will also hear, that this really has been transformational for UCCS. And we are so grateful for having had the support, and we're looking forward to continuing with sustained efforts towards supporting our students and increasing retention and persistence at UCCS. So thank you all again, and have a wonderful afternoon.